Yo, what's up? My name's Pat, and I'm aware that unfortunately this video is going to be very controversial, and I'd appreciate it if you would hear out my arguments before leaving a comment, and please, if you're going to leave a comment, attack my arguments and not me. In a dream world, video games are free and available for everybody, but developers and people who worked hard on these projects deserve to get paid for their hard work in our current system. However, from the consumer side, as someone who grew up extremely poor, 90% of the games that I played had to be free to play. I understand the importance of having access to beautiful art. In these cases, video games for people of all economic situations to inspire them to get into those exact fields to make a fulfilling and healthy living. For some people, video games could be the inspiration they need to climb out of poverty. And I would also argue in extreme cases of wealth disparity, I would even encourage alternative means of acquiring video games because it might be your only way to learn about the industry firsthand and become inspired to one day make your own games. Now, I'm not saying you need to go and sail the high seas for every copy of every game that exists, but maybe some crucial ones that could inspire you, especially when you're younger. I would argue it's crucial for a young artist's development. I can't imagine where I'd be without role-playing as a pirate occasionally when I was much younger. But if you're an adult, it's okay to accept the fact that you may not have access to some things you can't afford. And you probably should work on becoming okay with that sooner rather than later. Sometimes life is going to tell you no. But that's the groundwork of some of my positions. Is that enough qualifications out of the way? Let me know in the comments. Am I still going to get loads of hate because this is the internet? Yeah, probably, but let's try to take something constructive out of it. Today, I'm unfortunately making the brave argument that some video games are too cheap. I've seen people up in arms over the idea of GTA 6 possibly costing $100 or $120, and that's what largely inspired this discussion. Trust me, I don't want to hold this position. This is a type of position that gets you socially ostracized in the gaming sphere, but unfortunately, I think it's logically correct. I think in general, a lot of video games are probably underpriced. Well, some of them. Maybe a lot is a stretch. Let's go ahead and explain my first argument. You see, back in the 90s, a little game called Super Mario 64, a critically considered one of the best games of all time, released and retailed for about $60? Wait a minute, $60 in 1996? Isn't inflation one of the most discussed things when it comes to food and rent? Okay, $60 in 1996. That sounds a little crazy, but what's the price of a current Mario game? A physical copy of Mario Kart World on Nintendo's website currently goes for $80. A digital copy also goes for $80, but that's a different video topic. Okay, so games were $60 in the 90s and $80 today. That probably accounts for inflation, right? Not quite. According to every inflation calculator I could find, 1996, $60 would have been equivalent to around $122.93 US dollars in 2025 as of recording. This brings us to the reality that AAA retail video games have for the most part been $60 since the 90s and have never gone up in price until only recently. So with inflation considered, video games have actually been getting cheaper and cheaper every year since the 90s. And gamers have gotten away with it for so long, and only now are game companies trying to finally raise their prices and people are losing their minds. What? Hold up now. Let's be charitable to the other side. Why are people losing their minds? And I personally think it's because a lot of people see AAA game studios pumping out non-innovative games year after year with an updated roster set in the case of sports games, or in a different environment in the case of Assassin's Creed, or different guns and a few changes like in Call of Duty franchise. And they all just plop a $60 price tag on it and call it a day. Or obviously, as of recent years, more like an $80 price tag. All while simultaneously putting microtransactions in those same games you've already paid for. Now, I don't think gaming is going down the shitter like a lot of these people may think, but it's undeniable that since there is more money involved in the gaming industry, with it having grown as being a $20 billion industry in 1994 to around a $185 billion industry in 2025. I saw a few different sources bouncing around between 184 and 187. I'm just going to even it out to 185. Just a small margin of error of a few $billion. Now, even after accounting for inflation, that's over a 4 times value increase over the past 20 years. There's just way more money involved in gaming, which can encourage bad actors or certain companies to get into it purely to make a profit. Whereas previously it was mostly passion driving the industry and profit motive was still there, a business still needs to be profitable, but I would say it was a different percentage, maybe something like 80% passion back in the 90s and 20% profit motive, whereas nowadays it might have totally flipped to being 80% profit motive and 20% passion in the current industry. Now keep in mind, these numbers are just numbers I'm throwing out there and making up. These are not actual objective figures. I'm just using numbers to express an emotion. And now continuing my point, I fully agree that not all AAA games should be $60. Just because they spent more money to make the game does not always make it better. Which brings me to my more ironed out and genuine position. It's not just that some video games are too cheap, many are also overpriced. As a whole, video game pricing is probably not specific enough. How many of you have played a free-to-play MMO for thousands of hours? How many of you have paid $5 to $20 for games like Balatro, Terraria, Stardew Valley, etc., and gotten insane amounts of joy and hours of entertainment from these small to medium purchases? And to continue on from that, how many of you have bought Skyrim, Fallout New Vegas, Baldur's Gate 3, or Elden Ring, all for $60, and were still left vehemently happy with your financial decisions? Good games should have higher price tags, and worse games should have lower price tags. I know this sounds simple, but this is not a take I see nearly anyone expressing on the internet. It's always, video games are overpriced because gamers are clearly the most oppressed group of people in the online world. And a lot of people like to act like the victim in every situation instead of saying, hey, there's a lot of bad stuff going on, how can we critically address it? And also, hey, let's appreciate the positives as well that are also happening. Now, pragmatically solving this issue becomes extremely difficult. How do you decipher what is a good and bad game? Should price tags be adjusted as the game reviews come in? It doesn't need to be an exact science, is probably my take on it at the end of the day. I just want there to be more thought put into it when game developers or companies release a game. The current price structure just seems extremely standardized. Oh, you're a AAA game? $60. Small indie game? $5 to $15. High quality indie game or maybe AA studio type game, $30 or $40. And now we as gamers can impact this as well, and it's something I constantly push and constantly encourage. And I know it can be frustrating at times because your one decision can feel like a blip on the radar in the grand scheme of a market, but please vote with your wallet. If you are sick of Madden or MLB The Show or NBA 2K releasing the same games every year while deleting cool features that used to exist, then you need to vote with your wallet and not buy the same game every single year. Now, if you don't have a problem with these games and you're happy with them, then go ahead. I think you should vote with your wallet on the other side as well, even though I disagree with it, and continue to buy the games that you enjoy. Or if you think the games have a few issues, but you still find your purchase overall satisfied every single year, then once again, go ahead. Please vote with your wallet in the other direction as well. But if you're someone who constantly complains about new games being non-innovative and uninteresting, and they're not putting the effort in, then stop purchasing those games, dude. Video games are amazing, but there are a lot of negatives and positives to talk about with them, and I feel like sometimes people are afraid to talk about the positives. For example, video games are one of the best dollar per hour hobbies you could possibly have unless you're constantly buying a new $60 game every single month. And even if you're doing that, it's still a small portion of what the average American consumer spends on entertainment. According to Yahoo Finance, the average American spends about $3,500 to $3,600 a year on entertainment, which translates to about $300 per month. Which honestly sounds a little bit too rich for my blood, but I can totally see it. And if you can afford it, why would you not spend your hard-earned cash on fun life experiences? Things like going to concerts, sports games, movie tickets, etc. These are all entertaining activities that the average American does that cost them hundreds of dollars per hour. When you want to go out to eat with your partner, that's going to be at least $50 on average from my experience after tip. And you'll probably be in and out of the restaurant within 45 minutes. Video games crush this metric of being able to spend $60 or $20 nowadays on Skyrim and play it for thousands of hours. Look at games like Minecraft, Terraria, we've already talked about. There are endless games which you can spend $20 to $60 on and spend your entire life, or at least a large portion of it, playing. Even something like World of Warcraft, which growing up, I always thought World of Warcraft was so expensive. $15 a month? Who could afford that? And now, after a bit more life experience, I understand how silly that sounds. Comparing video games to other forms of entertainment is crucial for our perspective of how good we have it in terms of this one made-up metric of dollar per hour of entertainment, or dollar per hoe if you want to shorten it. The problem is when you tell anyone that they have it good in one area, but they feel bad due to other things in other areas, they often go on the defensive and start slinging poop and insults. The point of this video is not to say that you need to be happy with gaming or you have to think the same way that I do, because video games are objectively cheap. I know that's not the case. And I also know that any form of entertainment can feel ludicrously expensive when you're adding up every single item you put in your grocery cart to make sure that you don't overdraw your bank account. Trust me, I was there for the majority of my life. I get it. Your feelings are valid. This video is just meant to analyze the situation with some logic, fact check a few things, but also consider that facts do care about your emotions at the end of the day, because our emotions change our objectives and goals when it comes to productive discussion. At the end of the day, as long as you are purchasing video games you enjoy and spending your time having fun and being the positive change that you want to see in the world, then that's all that matters, and I'm happy to hear it. And I hope that you're happy as well. And I think this is where I'm going to go ahead and call it, but this is only the beginning of a much deeper conversation. There are arguments that I didn't even get into, like a broader access to tools to create video games, as well as more powerful tools that make creating them faster. Surely that should make video games cheaper, right? But then you also have to consider the fact that video games have gotten so much more complicated and increased in scale. Does that outweigh the tools created to make them? Which one of those things has progressed faster? The tools to make the games or the complexity of them? And I don't even know where to begin when it comes to answering that question, as I am not a developer and that is far out of my depth. I just love video games and I've spent my entire life playing many of them, and at the end of the day, I would just like to see the developers of all games put more time and thought process into the price tag they slap on to our video games. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to like the video. I always try to wait until the end of the video to ask that, because I find it silly to ask you guys to, consider your opinion on something you haven't even experienced yet. But unfortunately, it's much more effective to ask earlier on. So since most viewers don't even make it to the end of the video, if you're in that 10% who does and you liked the video, please like it. And then go ahead and dislike if you think I'm a big dumb and or also smelly. Subscribe to encourage me to make more videos like this one. They honestly don't take too much time to physically make these videos. Maybe about 10 hours or so of editing and scripting, maybe less than that. But usually well thought out scripted videos like this come from hundreds or thousands of hours of thinking and reflecting on the topic itself. Thanks again for watching, and try to have the best day you can today. Hey, what's up? Retro Pat here, and I want to say a quick big thank you to everybody whose name is listed here, because it means you went above and beyond and supported me via the Patreon, which allows me to put more time, effort, and resources into this channel. Thank you so much, and have a great day.